All right, friends. So I have the recording on now. And like I said, it'll, when we get to the end, when we're ready to ask questions, we'll stop the recording. So if you have any questions, just jot them down. And then at the end, we'll do questions. So this month we are talking about what to do while waiting. And it's tips and strategies from parents and providers for families on the wait list for treatment. My name is Angela Green. I am the coordinator for Philadelphia CHADD. And I don't know if everybody wants to introduce themselves or if we want to forego that since we're a small group. But my piece is that I am a teacher. I've been an educator for 18 years. My son has ADHD, and I didn't realize until I had a child with ADHD that I was not a good teacher for children with ADHD. So having him helped me become a better teacher. So there's a lot that I learned just in researching about ADHD and how his brain works. So that's one of the things you'll hear within the presentation when we talk about getting on the same page with schools. And then anything else about me? I'm training to be a teacher trainer, actually. So I'm almost have one more class and I'll have another certification. So I'm excited about that. So there's a little bit of that stuff in here as well. So if anybody else wants to come off mute and introduce themselves, feel free. And if not, we'll just jump right in. So I'll give you guys a minute if you want to talk. Most of you are looking at me like, no, get started. It's fine. I'm not offended. Okay. All right. So what to do while waiting. So first, our disclaimer, CHADD does not endorse any products, services, publications, and I want to move this because it's in the way. Medications or treatments, including those advertised as speakers at any CHADD events or in any CHADD publications or events, including meetings, webinars, or podcasts. So what I did in this presentation is just to keep everybody in mind that CHADD isn't endorsing anybody, is that when I had things that were from certain people, I put on the slides like where it was from, or you'll see like a watermark of where I got it from. And then there will be certain people who I'll refer to as well. So these are people that are more so endorsed by me and our team that came up with this presentation. All right. So then this is what I just said, that the tips, strategies, information, ideas, and advice presented and shared throughout this presentation are those of the parents and providers who represent themselves, not CHADD National. So we're going to start off with this.
Excuse me, Angela.
Yes.
Can you mention buy me a cup of coffee?
Yes. Thank you. And it would be awesome if one of you could put the link in the chat. If not, it's on the constant contact. Buy Me a Coffee is just a little fundraising thing that we have, because it used to be when we met in person, we had our little box and people would donate like $5 or whatever at the meetings. And that just helps with the operating costs. But since we're virtual, we don't have that anymore. So Buy Me a Coffee is kind of like our virtual box where you can buy, you can donate $5, it's increments as little as $5 just to support our operating costs. So hopefully someone will get the link for that in the chat. And if not, it is always on our constant contact as well. So if you feel like you want to donate, definitely click on that link. Thank you, Ingrid. All right. So the ADHD diagnosis is just the beginning. Before anything can change in your child, your perspective has to shift. So I have this here, and you're going to see a lot of things from this place called My Little Villagers. It's a blog, and I don't know if she's updating it recently, but it used to be one of the blogs that had won an award from CHADD. She has some really great stuff on there if you ever want to check it out. So she says, when it comes to ADHD, it is really quite simple. Either you believe it is real or you're wrong, because that's really what it is. We have so many people who think it's made up and they're just wrong. Like, we know there's no way around that. So our perspective as parents has to shift first. So the first thing that we need to understand, this is from Dr. Ross Green, kids do well if they can. And another one is, if they could, they would. That's from Carolyn McGuire. She's the author of Why Will No One Play With Me? And then Dr. Russell Barkley, who has done so much in the field of research for ADHD, I'm paraphrasing what he says, but ADHD is not a problem of knowing what to do, it's doing what you know. And I actually want to stop sharing for a moment so that I can pull up his actual quote that he said, because it's so much more than just that. And of course, my husband is calling me while I'm on this call, because why not? So if he comes up here and you'll hear the dog and all of my children as well, I apologize in advance for that to everybody. Okay, so let me get to that. So this is what Dr. Russell Barkley said. ADHD is a disorder of doing what you know. It is not a disorder of knowing what to do. So we probably could all say that because our kids know what they're supposed to be doing. But he said, so you can get the smartest person on this planet and you're still going to do some pretty stupid things because it's not what you know, it's doing it. So I thought that was something important for us to put out there. So then that brings us to the question of why. So let me share again. And this time, I think when I share, I'm going to just let you guys see my speaker notes. Okay, so this is from beyondbooksmart.com. And the graphic is, you'll hear a lot of people talk about this ADHD iceberg. And this is what you see at the top. You might see that a child is forgetful or scattered. You might think they're lazy, sloppy, or moody, impulsive, or rude. But then underneath that, there's so many other things. So the poor sense of time, the difficulty planning ahead, trouble regulating emotions. And I'm not going to go through and read all of these things because we're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth. But these are the things that have to do with executive function. So what makes ADHD so difficult is because it doesn't look like on the surface like it's a disability, but underneath there's so much more that's going on. So this is what I was talking about with executive function. This is from Cindy Goldrich, and she's actually the person whose training program I'm going through right now, PTS coaching. And this graphic, I think, is amazing because she shows the executive function skills. And I think a lot of times we don't realize that this is what is being impacted by ADHD. So it's the board of directors that helps you do what you decide to do. So I'll just leave this up here for a moment and make it big so you guys can actually see it. And the purple indicates a measurable cognitive skill. So these are the ones that we can measure on like exams and things that like the tests that they do at schools and such. So one of the big ones is initiation, like just getting started. And like a lot of times with our kids, it's like you want them to get started, they don't get started. And then you see it, a lot of times teachers see it as non-compliance, or we as parents see it as non-compliance. But it's really just an issue of their executive function. So emotional regulation is another one, self-monitoring, processing speed, even how it's like sometimes things need to be repeated for them so that they can get it a few times. And just flexible thinking, like there's a lot to this. So as we continue talking, you guys are gonna hear some more. So as frustrated as you feel as the parent, how do you think your child feels? And like I said, no one can see this. So there's this vicious cycle of failure that they go through every day, with the poor performance or outcome, and then the loss of confidence, and then less effort, and then that results in poor performance or outcome, and it just keeps going and going and going in this circle. And again, this graphic is from Beyond Book Smart again. So how do we help change this? This is why we're here right now, because that's like all the bad news. We're going to talk about how do we change it. So there is hope at the end of the tunnel. So the points that we came up with were, first, to parent the child you have, strengthen that relationship. And we're going to talk more about that but that's probably the most important thing. Not the child you want to have, not the child you envision that they could be, but the child that you have right now. Then getting on the same page with the school, connecting with your child's pediatrician, their primary care physician, contacting your insurance, getting a good support system and educating yourself, and then giving yourself and your child grace. And that's probably another one that's super important as we go through this. So now I'm going to stop talking for a moment and we're going to hear from the experts. So I'm going to, let's see if I just press escape, if it does what I want it to do. Of course not. All right, I was going to explain to you guys what this is from. So we have, and I'll stop sharing for a moment so I can figure it out. We have on our advisory board for Philadelphia CHADD, Dr. Thomas Power, and he is the head of, I'm going to mess up his title. Susan, what's I calling you to say what his actual official title is? I just always say he's the head of ADHD at CHOP.
He's the director of the Center for ADHD Management at
Thank you.
Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Department of Child Psychology.
Thank you very much. I love Susan. Everybody needs to have a Susan in their life. Okay, so Dr. Power is on our advisory board and he's amazing. So we have this phenomena here in Philadelphia where a lot of the people who come to CHADD are trying to get treatment through CHOP. So CHOP, because everyone is going to CHOP, has this long wait list. And I wish I could say that it's like a year or two, but honestly, my son is 12 and he was diagnosed when he was in kindergarten. So we were on that, he just started treatment, I would say, I believe in February, maybe. We just, and like when I got the call that they were ready to give us an appointment, I was like, is this for real? Like, what's happening? But so he was on there for about 5 or 6 years waiting for treatment. So this is why we're having this talk, because 5 or 6 years of no treatment is unacceptable. Like you have to have something in that time to treat the ADHD. So I reached out to Dr. Power just to let him know we were doing this presentation and to see if he had like anything that he wanted to add to it or if he had any advice. And he had this awesome video already that they had made for what's called the PASS study. So the PASS study is a research study that they're doing at CHOP. And it's for, and I'm going to read what it is officially. The PASS study at CHOP focuses on families from low-income urban settings who often have difficulty accessing behavior therapy. To address this problem, the study will determine whether it is beneficial to offer an enhanced behavior therapy and primary care practice for low-income families of children with ADHD. So this PASS study, and I'm actually a part of the PASS study as a teacher consultant. So they've been doing this, I believe it's been going on, I feel like we've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now, but they made these videos and there's a whole video series. So I'm very excited about that because he said that we can post it on our website. So all the parents will have access to it. And it addresses a lot of different things that you'll be dealing with in this time where you're waiting to be treated and also just getting to understand the ADHD and how to manage it. So I'm going to play this video and they're going to talk about some of the things that I kind of went over, but more in depth. So I'll play this. And remember, if you guys have any questions, please jot them down because then when we finish, we'll get to the questions. So let me see if it'll, okay,
Hi.
now the question is making sure you guys can hear it and see it because right now you can't see it. Okay, so when I start to play it, you guys could just give a thumbs up that you can hear it.
Hi, my name is Tanika Brown, and I'm with the PASS study at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Today, we're going to discuss what you can do while you wait for services. Unfortunately, due to high demand for care, seeking out behavioral health services can result in long wait lists. This can be frustrating, however, there are things that you can do to help your child in the meantime. This video will discuss tips on navigating your child's school community, primary care practice, and insurance provider. In addition, the video will offer tools to use at home and a list of resources for you to explore. Let's get started. To begin, take a moment to think of what you can do as a parent to help your child perform well in school. If you want, you can pause the video, grab a piece of paper and a pen, and write down a few ideas.
So I'm not gonna pause it, but just think about things you can do.
Okay, great. Let's get into some of these topics. Building a relationship with your child's school community is an important strategy to help your child do well in school. The school community includes your child's teachers, school counselors, principals, and anyone who has an impact on your child's day-to-day activities. It's important to attend parent-teacher meetings and contact school professionals when you feel there is a need. When meeting with the teacher, some good discussion topics include asking for the teacher's observation, pointing out the things the teacher is doing to help, and discussing ways you and the teacher can work together to help your child, and finding out the best ways to communicate with the teacher. Be sure to ask about all available resources that address behavioral health concerns when meeting with the teacher in schools. It is also important for you to advocate for your child's educational rights. It is beneficial for children with ADHD to have either a 504 plan or an individualized education program. For more information on 504 plans and IEPs, please go to the Past Study website to view videos 4 and 5 in the past video series or scan the QR code with your phone provided to the right. Also remember, a strong parent-teacher relationship is important for a child's success in the classroom.
And don't worry, I'll post these on our website.
When meeting with your child's primary care provider, it is strongly recommended that you discuss your child's academic, social, and emotional needs. These topics may be able to point you to resources in the practice or the community to obtain behavioral health therapy and family support. If you can, we recommend that you make a special appointment to have this discussion, as regular checkups and well visits may not offer enough time. After meeting with your child's doctor, make sure to keep all important medical documents such as their medical or psychological evaluations and records of family history in one place. This information can be a great help when you are able to get services. While waiting for services, reach out to your insurance company to learn about coverages for behavioral health appointments. Contact numbers are usually found on the back of your insurance card. You can also use website search tools to see which providers are covered under your insurance and determine the cost involved. Your insurance company may be able to help you search for providers who specialize in working with children who have been diagnosed with ADHD, provide behavioral health therapy, and help children in school. When you find a provider, always ask their cost of service and see if there are any co-pays for sessions. Also remember, some insurance companies might not let you see more than one behavioral health provider at one time, but you can be on several wait lists at the same time. To strengthen the relationship with your child and improve your child's behavior, it is important to take the time to catch your child being good, observe and praise your child frequently. Make time for play. For older children, participate in your child's favorite activities with them, even if they aren't your favorite. The purpose is to show that you want to spend time with your child and learn about what they love to do and who they are. Also, organize school documents. These can include documents such as school report cards and written observations from home and school, from teacher and other guardians. While waiting for services, it is important to reach out for help right away if you have a concern about your child's safety or that your child might hurt someone else. If you have a concern, you can call 911 or go to the emergency room of your local hospital. Other options are to call or go to the local crisis center or the clinic where you are waiting for services. Here are a couple website resources that may be of some help. If you want, you can pause the video and take a picture.
I'm going to highlight right here, CHADD. but
Here are a few book resources that you may be interested in while you're waiting. If you would like, you can pause the video and take a picture. I know we talked about a lot, but here are a few key notes to take away with you. 1. Build a relationship with your child's school community. 2. Talk to your child's primary care provider to make sure you have all your documents. Also, don't forget to ask PCP about resources in your community. 3. Get in contact with your insurance company to find out what is covered and how much your copay will be. And 4, strengthen your relationship with your child through age-appropriate play and interaction, allowing your child to lead the activity. Thank you for watching this video, and we hope this video has given you some ideas about what to do while you're waiting for services for your child. We encourage you to view other videos in the series as well. Thank you.
okay, I am going to pause that for a moment. But there will be a link to all of these, and my son is screaming, so I'm waiting for him to knock on the door to tell me what just happened. I apologize, everyone. But we will link all of this on our website. So they went through a lot, but what we're going to do now is go through it in a little bit more detail. If everybody can hold on a second. All right, he has a leg injury and they're going to get his father. So hopefully everyone will be okay. Okay, so I want to get back to this. So they went through the things that we were talking about. Stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions that they're okay with being on the recording so far? Are we good? Okay, I think everybody's good. And then if you're putting stuff in the chat for me, I can't see it. So just, if you have anything you want me to see, just come off mute to help out with that. So I'm gonna go back to this. Oh, and there's something else I forgot to highlight for you guys. It was a graphic on here. So I'm gonna go back and share the screen again for that. Because this was important to me. It's estimated that a child with ADHD receives 20,000 more negative comments than their peers by the age of 12. And that for me was very sobering, because to think about outside of the house, all the negative comments that they're getting, but then sometimes the negative comments that we as parents give without even realizing it. So we're going to talk about that momentarily. I actually got a tip from one of my son's therapists that was like, I didn't even realize I was doing something wrong, but he was like, well, when we get to it, I want to get ahead of it. But that's just something I want you guys to keep in mind. So just to review, we're going to go over these ways to change the situation. All right, so each one is going to be an individual section. All right, so the first one is to get on the same page with the school. So you have to learn the acronyms, educate the teachers, and I said respectfully, because some of them, it's easier to educate than others. And then executive dysfunction is not the same as noncompliance, which I said earlier, but it's so true. And this is a tool that we have, and it's actually hot off the press because this is Philadelphia CHADD's own version of it. CHADD National has a teacher's card, and we have an updated version of the teacher's card that has people who look like they're from this millennium. So that's fun. So we have this that we are going to share with our membership. And it's really, really good for parents. And you could also give it to the teachers because it explains quickly how they can recognize ADHD and the symptoms. So they're listed down here, but then on the back, this is my favorite part. It has strategies and tips, and they're quick strategies and tips that they can do in the classroom. So like seating is away from distractions or near the teacher or responsible peers. And I just want to put a plug in there because if you do have a 504 plan, which is something else we'll talk about, but if you have a 504 plan or IEP or whatever, a lot of times the seating plan is for the child to sit near the teacher or to sit away from the other kids. So I just want you to be mindful of that and make sure that your child is okay with that. Because for some children, as I found out with my son, it's a little traumatic that they're always sitting by themselves or that they're always sitting by the teacher every single year. So that came out in one of our sessions. So that's something to just be mindful of. But this is a resource that we do have, and we will definitely share it. We'll get it posted on our website as well. Okay, he came back to apologize, which disrupted us even more. I love him. All right, so the next one is to connect with your child's pediatrician. So one thing to discuss besides, because we always just talk about the ADHD and the symptoms that we see, but beyond that, discuss nutrition with them. You may be able to even see a nutritionist, sleep habits and exercise. We have found that sleep plays a huge role in managing ADHD. You may notice that sometimes when your child is at their worst, that within minutes after they have a meltdown, they're falling asleep, especially in the car with their sisters, which is what happens in my house. So sleep is a big part of this. Then discussing medication options, because we don't want to just jump right to medication, but sometimes that's what people need. But also to keep in mind that pills don't teach skills. Then consider other problems and coexisting conditions. And there's this word comorbidities, which I did not learn until my first CHADD conference. And it's to me the worst word ever. But it's just coexisting conditions, such as depression, anxiety, and then learning differences like dyslexia, which a lot of times they go under the radar. And these are things that our children are dealing with as well. So it's important to talk to your pediatrician about everything that you're seeing and take that time to ask questions. Does anybody want to add anything? I don't want to.
I do, Angela. I'd like to add that sometimes too, you have to be sure that you're really looking at ADHD and that you're not really seeing some other kind of condition, because sometimes restlessness can mean anxiety or it can mean other things. So the pediatrician has to rule out other things as a potential cause for some of the symptoms that you're seeing.
Yes. Thank you, Rosemary, for adding that. So definitely the pediatrician is your best resource while you're waiting to get treatment. All right. Next is contacting your insurance. Find out which services are covered. You don't want to have any surprises with your bill. Then you can also consider other options, such as therapy or coaching. And this is outside of like CHOP or whatever your normal pediatrician is. Check for mental health offerings through your job, and then consider telehealth when or if it's appropriate. So I think Lyra Health is one of the ones that I had listed in MD Live, because my job has these resources that they've been making a push for mental health since the pandemic. And I think a lot of places are doing that. So it's really important to research those, because at my job, they're offered for free. So you get, I believe it's like 5 sessions for free. And then after that, if you want to continue them, then you can pay for them. But what we ended up doing is, while we were waiting to be seen at CHOP, we scheduled for him to be seen by a therapist who specialized in ADHD. And that was a really great start. And those were telehealth appointments. And the reason that why I say is when and if it's appropriate, depending on the age of the child, just them getting to know a doctor through the phone or the laptop could also be a problem with them being able to focus and listen to what they're saying. So you just want to consider your child and consider the options that are best for them. But these are things that are available. And coaching, a lot of times we think about coaching for adults, but there are coaches that coach children and young adults. Susan, I don't want to put you on the spot, but Susan inspires me all the time too, because her son has ADHD and he now has a PhD. But he had to get a coach to help him get through his grad school work.
Well, high school first and then grad school. And
school.
actually, thanks, Angela. It's fine for you to put me on the spot, but yeah, coaching can be real beneficial to kids who need some extra structure that they can't provide themselves. And at school, he had an IEP and he did have resource room and things like that. But one of the challenges was him getting his work done after school. And as a single working full-time mom, it was like he and I used to fight about schoolwork all the time. So one of the things we tried to build into his IEP was that whatever schoolwork he completed at school, either with resource room or when he got a coach, was all the work that he was going to get done. That once he got home, he was done with work. And this only was after many, many years of them giving him zeros and saying, you know, he'll learn by the consequence of getting a zero for not turning in work and things like that. But having a coach was real helpful. But one of the things that they did was hiring a coach was expensive and the school didn't want to pay for it and my insurance wouldn't pay for it and whatever. So one of the things that they did was they found an ADHD coach who coached a student who was working on a mental health degree to actually be his coach. And it was their school project towards graduating was they were coaching him. And when they had questions about how to coach him, they went to the paid consultant who was the paid coach. So that decreased the out-of-pocket expense for the school because the person who was doing the actual hands-on coaching 90% of the time was a student. And it actually worked. But when he was in grad school, we actually had to rehire his ADHD paid coach to help him finish his thesis.
Yeah, Susan, I'd like to also comment on that. Some things that having a coach is such an excellent idea. My son also used a coach in college because it just gets to be overwhelming. And a couple things to think about. One, it doesn't mean you're less of a person or less of a student. It just means that you need a little more structure. You need a little more help. And the other point I'd like to make is that the part of the brain where kind of ADHD kind of lives, our executive function, lives in the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe does not mature until we're 25 for most of us. That's why we always do better in graduate school. And for people with ADHD, that part of the brain matures several years later. So, you know, they're the late bloomers of the world. So just remember that our brains take a long time to mature, and we're asking an immature brain to do very complicated things like organize, prioritize, get that work done. And that doesn't come easy for everyone.
Thank you guys for adding all of that.
Actually, if I could comment one more thing about your insurance. And Angela, you brought up a good point about employers and mental health. Employee assistance programs, frequently called EAPs, a lot of times will give you 5 sessions for a particular problem.
Right.
But you can just find the problem in small enough terms, you can use your EAP sequentially for multiple problems over a longer period of time for free. So you could say, for example, my son is having trouble with sleep and I need help with that because it's impacting his school attendance, and use those 5 sessions to try and address that. And then my son is having trouble with getting along with his siblings and is causing family stress. Whole nother 5 session series. So, you know, you can use that strategically. And then the other thing too is keep in mind that even if your insurance doesn't have someone in network per se, if you have the financial wherewithal to do this, you can frequently pick who you want, pay out of pocket, and at least get reimbursed for some percentage
Mhm.
of out-of-network coverage. Even though, because a lot of mental health providers don't take insurance, partially because insurance companies want them to give documentation that they feel that ethically should not be shared with insurance companies. So a lot of times they won't participate because of that. Sometimes you have to find the right therapist and then just find a way to work out whether it's a sliding scale or you pay some percentage out of pocket and then submit for reimbursement or whatever. But there's a lot of leeway in how that works if you find the right person.
That's great information, because I did not know that about the 5 sessions for a certain topic. So that's good, and thank you guys for sharing all of that. So there's a lot there, and this is all like the stuff that is great for while you're waiting to get through CHOP or wherever you're on the wait list for. And even how they said in the video, you can be on a wait list for more than one place as well. It doesn't have to just be one place at a time. So that's something else that's good to know, because I don't think people realize that. All right, so that brings us to our next slide. Yeah. All right, so get a good support system and educate yourself. So this is my shameless plug for CHADD. We meet every third Thursday virtually. We used to meet in person before the pandemic. I'm hoping one day we'll get back to meeting in person, at least like maybe every quarter or something. But membership in CHADD has its benefits. Coming to the meetings each month is free. Like, that's not something that you have to pay for. And there's so much information that comes from that. But when you become a paid member, there are additional things you get from CHADD, like the magazines. You get access to different things, you get discounts. For me, the biggest thing was probably just being able to get into because you can go to the conference, but it was discounted. And my first CHADD conference was the one that was in Philadelphia, and I think it was 2019. It might have been 2018. I'm not sure, but I was just
November of 19.
okay. Thank you. I was so full of information from that conference, and it was just like, I don't want to miss these ever again. Like, I learned so much. And we just had one this past weekend for the Northeast region, and that was something new. It was like a mini conference, and it was that same feeling where you're just, and Jackie Lynn went with me too, so I know she had that same feeling where you're just like so full of information, and it's just like, how do I use this? And you're so excited, but it's so much. So CHADD has a lot going on, and I do want you all to know as well, one of the other things is with CHADD, I'm on the chapter advisory board. So one of the things we talk about in our meetings with CHADD National is just finding ways to make paid membership even more of an advantage for our members. So we've been talking about other things that we can do, like having advocates available and things of that nature. So those are things that aren't necessarily what we have right now. Like, we can always tell you like about people that we know or refer people, but those are things that we're talking about and discussing with them, so they know like these are the things that people need to help them be able to manage ADHD and to help their child do well in school. So there are tons of benefits for CHADD. And then I said the meetings and the conferences, they're excellent tools. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to add just about being a member of CHADD, but like I said, Philadelphia CHADD is active. We have a growing community, and right now we branched over into adults as well, because a lot of adults realize through their child's diagnosis that they also have ADHD. So then it becomes a matter of, well, how do I manage this for myself so I can be a better parent for my child too? So we have things to help with that as well. So I don't want to, if anybody has anything to say, just jump in. But I'm going to go on to the next slide. All right, so then the last one was to just give your child yourself and your child grace. And this is so important because people with ADHD are hard on themselves already without other people being hard on them. So we say ADHD is hereditary. So you may be struggling too, which is what I was just talking about. Consider the source for everything that's said about your child. So this kind of brings me back to teachers, like not to hate on my profession, but sometimes there are some teachers who are mean. And like when they call to say something, they're not coming from a place that's positive. So I had one teacher this year who she was constantly texting me about the things that my son was doing wrong in class. And I had to tell her, like, if you're constantly telling me what he's doing wrong, when is he ever hearing what he's doing right? Because you're not telling me. So I know he's not hearing it from you. And he does not work well from a place of negativity. So once she kind of understood that, then we were able to work from a place of, oh, like they said in the video, catch your child being good. So then she was more mindful of, oh, wait, he's sitting down, he's doing his work and he's on task. I didn't have to repeat the instructions for him. So then she would see that and say, oh, I like how you're doing this or whatever. But these are things that you as the parent advocate sometimes have to be the one that they might not like because you have to advocate for your child. So that goes with encouraging the positives and not the negatives. I was telling you all, I heard from one of my son's therapists that we do a lot of negative talking, and he said it's almost like we do double negatives when we talk to the children. So we might say something like, I'm glad you didn't talk back, and mean it as a compliment, but it's still negative because we're highlighting the fact that they may have talked back before, or that might be what they usually do. So instead, you might say something like, I love that you listened to what I had to say, and just leave it at that. So just as a parent, being mindful of how you're saying things, and then not nagging or expecting things to happen right now. At the conference this weekend, this past weekend, and this is again why I love CHADD, because I love listening to other parents because they have so much information to help you. One of the parents was saying that for her kids, she used to say, for example, I need you to take out the trash. And you're going to say it to them 8,000 times, and the trash is not going to go out. And they're mad, you're mad, everybody's mad, and their trash is still not out. So she's gotten to a place now where she'll say, oh, that trash is really overflowing. Man, there's so much trash. And then her son might say, oh, mom, I'll take that out for you. And he's taking ownership of it. She's not asking, she's not nagging. But then she said, just because we can't just leave it at that for kids with ADHD, because they still have their executive function skills. So then she says, oh, well, when do you think you might do that? And he'll say, oh, in the next 15 minutes. And then she knows that 15 minutes means 1 to 5 hours, possibly, but it'll get done by that 5-hour mark. And then when it gets done, to thank him for doing it and to be patient and not to expect everything to happen right now. Because another thing with ADHD, we have time blindness. So for a kid with ADHD, everything is now or not now. And that's all it is. You're either doing it now or you're not doing it now. So we as parents have to make that shift to be able to parent our children in a way that's more positive. So those are just some examples. I'm going to make sure I got all of them. If anybody has any other ones.
Actually, Angela, to build on the slide that you highlighted where you said how many negative feedback pieces kids get by the time they're age 12. During COVID at work, I was hearing lots and lots of stuff about positive reinforcement. And I was shocked because at one point they actually made a point of telling managers where I work that we should be giving 5-to-1 positive feedback. So for every negative, we should be giving 5 positive feedback messages first. And it was like, oh my God, whoever does that. But if you think about how many messages that kid needs to hear that are positive, if you multiply that 20,000 by age 12, that's 100,000 messages that of positive messages, and how much work that is, that's going to take all of us to switch that around. But if a normal neurotypical adult in a work setting needs 5 positives for every 1 negative message, like multiply that by what kids need. They need way more than that. So we really need to work on, switching how we talk to our kids. And I think about all the horrible things that I said to my kid growing up. But I mean, and one of the things I used to practice all the time was when I didn't like the way he was behaving, I always gave him the message that I may not like your behavior right now, but I am always in your corner and I always love you. Kids need to know that they have someone in their corner to build resilience. And I know he knows that. I mean, at 37, almost 37, he tells me frequently that he always knew that I was in my corner, or he'll hear something in the news and he'll say, you did that for me when I was in school. So I know he heard that message, but it takes, you have to keep repeating it.
I was at the conference, and as a grandmother who, raised a son during a time where ADHD was not talked about very much, and it certainly was not believed to be true, including me. One of the things that they said about unseen, and you mentioned it too, Angela, about unseen disabilities. If someone's limping or someone's disfigured, you see that. And so you respond, but you don't see the kid who's cringing inside because they're giving them their own negative messages. I'm stupid, I'm dumb, because they're getting all these other negative messages outside. So the point about having a support group like we're talking right now, and realizing, okay, not only am I not alone in this, but there's so much learning that I have to do. And I have to do it for the sake of this child who really needs, really needs you. It really, really needs you. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I do just want to say, because I keep coming back to teachers, but in my class, it's just mind-boggling to me because teachers I've always had parents who will remind me that I spend more of their child's waking hours with them on any given day than they do because they work. So then you have this one person that's with your child all the time. And then it's like the luck of the draw, like, how are they treating your child? And what's scary is that in teacher courses, we don't really learn about ADHD. It's not, and I know like Susan and Rosemary had said, like, even in nursing, like it was like a little tiny blurb, and then it's like, that's it. But we don't learn about it. And then so many things that are a part of ADHD end up being perceived as a child being lazy or a child being disrespectful, or as we said, being non-compliant. And so you end up tearing down this child and giving them all those negative, all that negative feedback because you don't know. So it's just like I said, advocating for your child is so important because you can assume the teacher doesn't know. Like, we've come in contact with some teachers that do know, but the ones that do know, they're few and far between. So it's not offensive for you to give them that information because they do need to know it. And then learning it doesn't just benefit your child, it benefits all the children in the class, because then everyone gets that teacher that's coming from a different viewpoint and has a different perspective as they're talking to the children and as they're maybe making accommodations in the classroom and things of that nature. So those were some of the things that I think are important. And let me get to the last slide because we're coming to the end, guys. All right, so final words. Raising happy, healthy children with ADHD comes down to these core actions: accepting your child for who they are, setting them up to succeed with their unique abilities in mind, and understanding that mistakes on your part and your child's are inevitable, says Dr. Barkley, PhD. So that's Russell Barkley, who we heard from before about ADHD is not a problem of knowing what to do, is doing what you know. So this is another meme from My Little Villagers. And it's funny because I Googled this to make sure this book doesn't exist still, because this was an old meme. There is a book that has a similar title, but it's not How to Raise a Child with ADHD. But she said the reason it doesn't exist is because no child with ADHD is the same. And your child's book can only be written by you. There's the saying that if you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD. Everyone's ADHD is different. So you and your child together are writing that book. So it's something to enjoy. It's different probably from what everybody expects. But as you get into the journey, it's something that you can enjoy, because then you get to see that a lot of our children are gifted and they're exceptional because they think outside of the box, because they have that creativity. So things that could be labeled as negatives, we can turn them around and realize that they're positives for them. So I think that's it for me. And I'm going to stop the recording. So if anybody has any questions, they can ask questions, or if they just want to talk.